I normally talk about eating to beat disease. And today, I think we're talking about drinking to beat disease because tea is something that is even more natural to consume than eating food because it's just, we got to stay hydrated. But I think first among equals, I discovered through my own research is tea. And what does tea do? Tea helps our body's hardwired self-defenses resist disease. Today, I'm really happy to be talking about one of my favorite beverages, which is tea. I actually drink 3 to 5 cups of tea a day, and it's different kinds of tea I actually enjoy. I love the taste, I love the experience, I like how I feel after I have tea. And of course, there's a lot of health benefits with it, and I've actually been a researcher looking at the health benefits of tea. So today we're going to talk all about tea. We actually took tea that had been brewed and we studied it in cancer research labs. In fact, I did some tea research with the National Cancer Institute, and a lot of people don't know how you do this, but basically you brew tea, okay? And then it's too hot to really do anything with you. Then you cool it, and then you refrigerate it. And so some people ask, well, is it only hot tea that's good for you, or iced tea? Is iced tea any good for you? Well, I can tell you in the research lab, when we actually study tea, the tea actually gets refrigerated, so it's actually cold. And of course, then you have to warm it back up to room temperature before you can expose it to cells or give it to animals to drink or what have you. So the idea that, brewing tea and changing the temperature does not affect its beneficial effects is really important, because that means that hot tea or iced tea is actually good. Now, we actually studied it in systems that were used for drug development. In other words, the same experimental models that are used to test cancer drugs. And what we found was quite remarkable, that not just any tea, but multiple teas, not single teas, but multiple teas could actually have this cancer-starving effect by cutting off the blood supply. And that's really good news. And it's kind of a new discovery in a way, but it builds on all the other reasons that tea could be beneficial to somebody with suffering from cancer. Or frankly, if you don't have cancer, it could be a number of other conditions in which you want to have beverage that can calm inflammation in your body, that can help you have better immunity, that can feed your gut microbiome, which are the healthy gut bacteria that communicates to your immune system. So I think there's many reasons why tea is such a beneficial beverage, in addition to it being delicious. There are so many more ways to use tea. The most important thing I want people to know is that tea, green tea, brown rice tea, other types of tea, even black teas, they actually activate your body's health defense systems. And these are the hardwired systems that we were born with that tea will activate. When our health defenses are activated, our health is protected. It kind of lowers our risk for multiple diseases. And for something that tastes as good as tea, it's enjoyable as well. And tea is also quite relaxing, which I think is really important for all of you to know about. So I tested Japanese tea, Chinese jasmine tea. I tested Earl Grey black tea. My assumption, the hypothesis, is that you're going to actually see that Japanese tea is the most potent, like matcha, for example. And what I found was, in fact, that Earl Grey was the most potent when it comes to angiogenesis and starving cancer. Like, whoa, black tea scented with bergamot is going to be the most potent tea when it comes to starving your cancer. Like, that's not what the urban legend said, and that's not what the popular idea is. And so I started realizing maybe there's an urban legend to this. So again, science leads the way, and it's still true even if you don't believe it. So I saw what in my research I studied. Earl Grey tea was one of the most potent when it comes to angiogenesis. Then Chinese tea, Japanese tea in fact came third. But what was crazy is that when we started to blend teas together, we just violated the rules of culture and said, yeah, let's go ahead and blend some Chinese and Japanese tea together. let's mix them together, right? International, right? So, and we mix them together. What we found is that blending Chinese and Japanese tea created a tea synergy, and the combination of both was more potent than either one alone or additive activity of them when it came to angiogenesis control for starving cancer. Tea is something that is even more natural to consume than eating food because it's just, we got to stay hydrated. Tea comes from a plant, and we know that plant-based foods are good for our health. That's now almost universally recognized. And the leaf of the tea, which is what we steep, and you're going to show us this, Mike, nobody does it better than you. But from a sort of researcher's perspective, there are thousands of natural chemicals. We call them bioactives because they interact with our biology. And some of the compounds that are natural chemicals are like catechins, gallic acid, theanine, and theaflavins. And they all wind up in a cup of tea when you brew it. Some of the amazing things that have been shown by research is that drinking tea actually can help prevent our cells from aging. So it's even has I'm sure the emperor didn't have the science, but appreciated that anti-aging properties of tea, prevents our telomeres from shortening. So our cells stay younger, slow down cellular aging. There's a polyphenol. Everybody talks about polyphenols. I like to be specific. So the polyphenol that has been best studied in tea is called EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate, EGCG, and green tea has a lot of it because it's closest to what comes off the tea plant. And then everything from that, all teas come from that downstream in terms of how they're prepared. But green tea has, as much as 16 times that EGCG than some of the more processed or handled teas. And one of my favorite things to talk about EGCG is that I did research on this with the National Cancer Institute, is if you take tea and you put it into the same system that is growing blood vessels that would feed a cancer. Cancers are harmless if they can't get a blood supply. And if you put tea in that system, the blood vessels that would feed a tumor cannot grow. It takes them right apart, prevents new ones from growing. And, and so people say, well, that's really amazing. Was it hot tea or cold tea? Well, in the research lab, we've got to use cold tea. We use cold tea. And so obviously you wouldn't pour hot tea into a dish. You'd cook everything. So this goes to show that the hot tea, which is where it started, and then we had to chill the tea in the refrigerator in a glass pitcher. We turned the hot tea into iced tea, and the next day when it was cold, we then tested it in the lab. So this shows that this anti-angiogenic cancer-starving property of tea, the EGCG, is present in both the hot tea and preserved through, from the steeping, but also preserved in the refrigeration and cooling, and still works when it's cold. So I think that the good news there is hot tea, iced tea, it all works. It actually helps our circulation. It's been shown in the lab to help fight cancer growth. Other studies have shown lowers blood pressure, helps your blood cholesterol, helps your immune system. It's got antioxidants and anti-inflammatory properties. And one of the things that, I always say is, show me the evidence. Well, there's been clinical studies involving people showing that drinking 2 to 3 cups of green tea a day is associated with more than a 40% reduction in the risk of developing colon cancer. Sometimes I like a really strong cup of tea, and sometimes I like a lighter cup of tea, and that's why having tea leaves, the loose leaf tea is great. On the other hand, if you have a tea in a bag or a sachet, you can also just pull the bag or sachet out. The one little tip that I'll tell you from the health and polyphenol perspective is if you're using tea that's in its own bag or sachet, you want to dunk that tea periodically while it's steeping, because that action will actually allow the natural, healthy chemicals, the EGCG, to come out into the water better. Let me share a little bit about the different types of diseases that tea has been shown through research to be protective of, and how much you need to drink. And so we talked about the fact that for colon cancer, research has shown that drinking 2 to 3 cups of green tea causes a substantial reduction of about 40-some%. Cardiovascular disease, heart disease, which in cardiovascular is all the blood vessels in our body, stroke, brain, heart attack, 4 cups of tea a day, which I easily drink 4 cups of tea a day, has been shown to substantially lower the risk of heart disease. Same dose for lowering the risk of lupus, which is an autoimmune inflammatory disease, calming the immune system down to the right size. And some of the things that really surprised me, by lowering inflammation without compromising our immunity against bacteria and viruses, about 4 to 5 cups a day has been shown to be beneficial to protect against multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease, and rheumatoid arthritis as well. It's wonderful that, you can be any age. You could be a teenager. You could be, young kids are starting to really come on to tea as well. And I think that this is tea is something you can drink your whole life. And that's the other wonderful thing.